How did we go from marijuana makes you go insane to billion-dollar weed industries in just a few decades? The truth is, marijuana wasn't banned because of danger or it being bad for you. It was banned because of racism, politics, and corporate greed. Stick around because by the end of this video, you'll see the story no one teaches you in school. And it'll completely change how you think about history. And if you're tired of watered down history that you're not taught in school and you want the raw truth, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Let's get into it. Before weed became a target, it was completely normal. In the 1800s and in the 1900s, cannabis was legal and even sold in pharmacies as medicine. Hemp was everywhere, used for rope, paper, and textiles. When immigrants arrived in the early 1900s, especially after the Mexican Revolution, they brought the recreational use of cannabis. At the same time, black jazz musicians were smoking it in clubs, and it was being tied to creativity, music, and rebellion. To people in power like the government and corporations, this new popularity wasn't harmless, it was problematic, and they quickly found a way to turn it into a weapon. In the 1910s and the 1920s, marijuana became known as the drug of immigrants. Politicians and newspapers fueled stereotypes claiming it made Mexican immigrants violent and dangerous. In black communities, especially in jazz culture, weed was tied to the nightlife, music, and independence. That scared people who wanted to keep these minorities in check. Harry Anslinger, the first commissioner of the Federal Bureau of Narcotics in the 1930s, he became the face of the anti-marijuana crusade. His quotes were openly racist. One of the most infamous quotes from him was that marijuana causes white women to seek sexual relationships with Negroes, entertainers, and any others. Weed wasn't just criminalized because of health concerns, it was used as a tool to criminalize minorities. But racism wasn't the only reason. There was big money at stake. Hemp was cheap, renewable, and versatile. That made it a threat to powerful industries. William Randolph Hearst, who owned massive timberlands and paper mills, did not want hemp replacing wood pulp for paper. DuPont had just invented nylon, and hemp was a direct competitor. So Hearst newspapers pumped out fear-mongering headlines that marijuana was the assassin of youth. It wasn't about protecting public health, it was about protecting the corporation's profits. Corporate lobbying and racist propaganda worked hand in hand to build momentum for a nationwide ban. In 1936, the film Reefer Madness hit the public. It showed marijuana turning normal teenagers into violent criminals and lunatics. It wasn't displaying science, it was just pure fear marketing. But it worked. Public opinion shifted hard. Marijuana became linked to crime, insanity, and moral collapse. And for many Americans, it stopped being viewed as a plant and it became viewed as a threat. In 1937, the Marijuana Tax Act was passed. It didn't ban weed outright, but instead taxed it so heavily that it was impossible to sell it or use it legally. Congress barely even debated it. There was no serious medical or scientific evidence that was presented. The law was framed as protecting society, but behind the curtain, it was the perfect mix of racism, fear, and corporate lobbying. Fast forward to the 1970s, the Controlled Substances Act classified marijuana as Schedule 1, the same category as heroin, and they labeled it as having no medicinal use. President Nixon declared marijuana public enemy number one.
I began the meeting by making this statement, which I think needs to be made to the nation. America's public enemy number one in the United States is drug abuse.
But later, one of his top aides, John Ehrlichman, admitted the real reason. The Nixon campaign had two enemies, the anti-war left and black people. We couldn't make it illegal to be either, but by getting the public to associate hippies with marijuana and blacks with heroin, then criminalizing both, we could disrupt those communities. So the war on drugs wasn't really about health or safety, it was just about politics and control. Over time, science chipped away at the myths. Studies showed that weed wasn't as nearly harmful as claimed. In the 1990s, states began legalizing medical marijuana. By the 2010s, recreational use followed. Today, cannabis is a multi-billion-dollar industry, but here's the catch. Thousands of people, mostly minorities, are still serving prison sentences for charges related to a plant that is nearly sold everywhere. So what's the real reason why weed was made illegal? It wasn't about safety, it was about racism, politics, and profit. And understanding this matters because it shows how laws aren't always based on the truth. They can be shaped by prejudice and power. So next time someone says weed was banned because it was dangerous, you'll know the real story and you can explain to them the truth. If you learned something new today, hit that like button and subscribe. I make videos breaking down the hidden side of history, health, and society.